Him by Her Village. What is the Him by Her Village? I'm here today to talk about real life, real conversations, so the entire world gets an opportunity for us to understand why it cannot be about us without us. It does take a village to raise a child, but these villages are already raising our children. We will march over one life being lost to the hands of a police officer that doesn't look like the person whose life was taken. I'm a retired homicide detective. I'm the only homicide detective that solved 100% of my homicides. The only person that solved 100% of the homicides before me was my grandfather. And there's a plaque in the city of Indianapolis, downtown, the city county building, that says, Harry Dunn Sr. I'm Harry Dunn III. It says Harry Dunn Sr. solved 100% of his homicides for 32 years. My father was a police officer on this same department in Indianapolis. He was shot and paralyzed by another African-American police officer. And so I understand the repercussions of a trigger being pulled. I understand the other side of law enforcement, of being a person that is viewed in certain ways from your own community. But there's reasons why we were capable of solving our homicides. I also would like to say that when I solved my homicides, 80% of them resulted by confession. So I'm a person who would sit in the room and speak with individuals that have murdered 1, 2, 3 people at one time. Some that never got caught for the ones they had done before they saw me. When I walked into the interview room, they called me the truth when I walked in the room. Because that's what we were getting ready to have when we sat down and had a conversation. Because I settled for no less. I solved my homicides uniquely enough in most of my life's trials and tribulations. I take on using the Pythagorean Theory. If a squared is equal to b squared is equal to c squared, then obviously a squared and c squared are equal, right? So these two people over here told me the truth at the scene, and then two people who were not on the scene told me the same story, and then my evidence came to match both of theirs. That's the same as the Pythagorean Theory, right? And so more and more and more, I began to develop these relationships here in this community, meeting people at some of their worst times in their lives. It does take a village. We are already those villages. You have people that have flown in all around the world to take opportunities like we have here today. They came from a village that they flew in from. They flew into another village. It takes other villages to help lift up another village, to make it a community. It takes people that doesn't look like you to show you that they care. Doesn't come from your social status, to show you that they're willing to donate, willing to support, willing to volunteer, to help save that lives. Because I'm going to tell you what I've learned in my years of seeing some of the worst situations and some of the worst times. I've learned that I was on homicide scenes chasing after young men that looked just like me. I was standing over bodies that looked just like me or like my family members. And there was a point in time when me and my wife Michelle Dunn, we sat in bed and we prayed and we said, you know what, we have got to do something about it. God has given us the strengths and the abilities to be able to say, it is your time, it's your season. What can you do? And so we sat together and I said, well, if we can come up with a foundation. I said, I want to give back. And she said, I do too. And I said, well, what could we call it? And then we said we wanted to give all honor to him. So there was the him and him by her. We want to give all honor to him. And so, and my wife sat up and she smiled. She said, well, I want to be her, right? And so we sat there back and forth. We said, well, what would we offer? What would the programs look like? We said, well, no matter what, we don't want to be like any of these cookie cutter models that get donated $5,000, $10,000 from these community foundations, like that's enough to actually start a nonprofit or start a business that's going to have an effective change, okay? We are asking for people to understand that it takes a total buy-in from all communities to get something accomplished, right? To save these young lives, it's education and jobs. And so our programs was about education and jobs, right? Him by Her stands for helping improve mankind by healing every race, right? Helping improve mankind by healing every race. Him by Her. And so I want you to know that after a lot of praying, we have started a school that teaches from K through 8, but we've wrapped around services inside that building, teaching their parents vocational skills after school, right? We have an anger management class of teaching. It's an anger management boxing class, right? Because we're trying to save lives by occupying time. And trust me, the key components is you need to occupy your time. It's either going to be in school, at work, or it's going to be in jail. Make a choice, right? And so if we can keep those idle minds busy, we can make an effective change in saving these young children's lives, right? When we go to church, do you know most of the time we leave our children home in the dark? And one of the worst places you can leave a man is at home in the dark, okay? So we don't do well in the dark. And I tend to tell people that character is who you are in the dark. You see what I'm saying? So that's who you really are. And so we are asking, all of ourselves should be asking, what is my child doing while I'm right here, right now? With social media pouring into their minds, 3,000 names, 3,000 visions pouring into their minds all at once, deterring them while you're pouring into them, you're pouring into them. 2 households, both of them have incomes from mom and dad, raising these babies, and they're doing a spectacular job. Mom and dad go to church, leave the babies at home, and next you know the police become their babysitters. It takes a village. Okay, and so when it comes to why we started this foundation, is because I had to learn to start solving homicides on a whole different level. My son came knocking on my door and he said, Dad, I want to leave. I want to go find my mom. I haven't seen her all of my life. And I know that she's out there and I know that she exists and I want to be a part of her life. I want to meet her. I said, boy, I've had you since you was 2 weeks. 2 weeks I've had you. And you're going to walk out of this house and go to a house where it's a lot easier for all the things I said no to, they're going to say yes to? You leaving me? Do you know how many fathers are not in young men's lives? But I understood at the same time. Because for in my house, we serve the Lord. And if you ain't going to buy it by these rules in this house. So at the end of the day, he left. I went into prayer and into prayer and into prayer for my seed. And it wasn't until God wrapped his arms around me and said, you keep crying to me about your son. But if I allowed my son to go through what I allowed my son to go through, what makes you think I won't let yours go through? That kind of pain made me put on the full armor of the Lord. And now, before I leave the house, I'm armored up. I said, I'm not going to go just get my son. I'm going to go get everybody that looks like him, going through things like he went through. I'm going to get all of them. So we started the school. And you have young babies in this school that have the arts infused in their curriculum. They have an Afrocentric curriculum. We don't have a European curriculum here. It's culturally responsive. And I just want you all to know that if you're going to get involved and have a community impact, don't be afraid to partner up strategically. Don't be afraid to support each other, right? Don't be afraid to look at someone who doesn't look like you and ask them to help. We have people from all communities coming in saying that we want to be a part of that village. I need all of you to go back home and help continue building those villages. I've seen too many lives lost. We have too many lives to save. And we are the ones in this moment right now. If we say that all black lives matter, then we should care about the 245 of them murdered in this city last year. Let's go get them. I stand with you. Stand outside of your bubbles. Understand that we're all inside of our own little bubbles. But let's please be prepared to step outside that bubble before your bubble gets burst, or before somebody else bursts your bubble, right? My name is Harry Dunn. This is my TEDx talk. I thank you all very much.